On January 17th, 2021, the Tom Brady-led Buccaneers would knock the New Orleans Saints out of the playoffs, marking the end of an illustrious career for Drew Brees, as he would retire shortly after.
On the 15-year anniversary, he announces the decision today, courtesy of his kids. He bids goodbye to the football team that he was such an integral part of. And remember, he went to that franchise at a time when nobody wanted to go there. It was a barren franchise. It was losing. It was not a destination. And Drew Brees turned it into one of the winning organizations in football.
With Drew Brees and Sean Payton's departure, the Saints have truly just been a shadow of their former selves. The year is 2024, and the Saints have just fired their head coach mid-season after starting with a record of 2-7. The Saints right now are, simply put, bad, and have been bad for a while now, with no real hope or a savior at the moment. And honestly, I don't know if we'll ever be as good as when we had those two. It might be years, who knows, maybe even decades, till we find success like that again. The point is, the future is looking kind of bleak in New Orleans. But this makes me wonder, when was the last time the Saints were actually genuinely good? And where did it all go wrong? Let's start from the very beginning. From the very moment the Saints went from a poverty franchise to a real competitor in the NFL. In 2005, the New Orleans Saints ended the season with a record of 3-13, but football was the least of their worries that year. Going into 2006, the future wasn't looking very good. The city had just been destroyed, the Superdome had been destroyed, and this team was horrible. I mean, who would actually want to play here? Well, in the 2006 offseason, the Saints front office would make a bold move in signing assistant head coach Sean Payton from the Dallas Cowboys. Sean's first move as a head coach of the Saints was to find his quarterback. Standing at 6'4" and having just thrown for 4,700 yards and 40 touchdowns in 2004, Dante Culpepper was the ideal quarterback. But after the Dolphins picked him up in free agency, there was really only one guy Sean Payton could get. The 5'11", 27-year-old Drew Brees, who was recently let go from the Chargers, was coming off a really bad shoulder injury. The general consensus back then was that it wasn't known if Brees would be able to play football again, let alone at a high level. But Sean Payton was willing to take that risk. And I think it paid off, being that they brought home the franchise's first ever Lombardi trophy just 4 years later. Now, with the addition of a Hall of Fame coach and quarterback in Sean Payton and Drew Brees, the Saints were very good, and for a long time. But when was the last time the Saints were actually good? Well, for that, let's go to the 2017 offseason, nearing the end of Drew Brees' career. The Saints were coming off a disappointing 7-9 record in 2016, landing the 11th overall pick. The team had a good offense. I mean, you really can't have a bad offense with Drew Brees as your quarterback. But the New Orleans Saints had a big problem: defense. The defensive side of the ball had almost no talent, no good players. I mean, from 2014 to 2016, the Saints had arguably the worst defense in the entire NFL.
Coleman already has 2 rushing touchdowns, and that's a walk-in for his third. That's embarrassing. Every time the Saints defense has a chance to make a big play, it cannot.
However, they would fix that pretty quickly in the 2017 draft.
With the 11th pick in the 2017 NFL Draft, the New Orleans select Marshawn Lattimore, defensive back, Ohio State. Ryan Ramczyk, tackle, Wisconsin.
Marcus Williams, defensive back, Utah.
Alvin Kamara, running back, Tennessee. Alex Anzalone, linebacker, Florida. Trey Hendrickson, defensive end, Florida Atlantic.
Man, it's really been 70 years since his draft. Yeah, this draft class was insane, and no wonder it's recognized as one of the best drafts of all time. And as time goes on, it's only panning out better. This draft class set the Saints up perfectly to become a really good football team. And that's exactly what happened in the 2017 season. The offense was anchored by players like Mark Ingram, Michael Thomas, Max Unger, and of course Drew Brees. The addition of Alvin Kamara and Ryan Ramczyk made the offense so much more dynamic. The defense, who featured players like Cameron Jordan and Sheldon Rankins, got better with the addition of Marshawn Lattimore and Marcus Williams. It might not have been known at the moment, but this team was good. However, 2017 for the Saints started off kind of rough. The team would begin the season losing their first 2 games, albeit against 2 really good teams in the Vikings and the Patriots. But this would all change in week 3. The Cam Newton-led Panthers would get completely overwhelmed 34-13 against the Saints. And in week 4, the Saints would completely neutralize the Dolphins and shut them out 20-0. And just like that, the winning streak would begin. The New Orleans Saints will win 6 more games in a row, putting up an insane 52 points against the Lions and 47 against the Bills. In Week 11, the Saints were chasing that 8th game in the winning streak. Their opponent would be the Washington Redskins. With 3 minutes left in the game, the Saints were down 15 points. It was looking like the streak would finally come to an end. That is, until Drew Brees decided to take over. He would lead the Saints to completing 2 touchdown drives in a row, and a successful 2-point conversion would send the game to overtime. The Redskins received the ball first, but they couldn't do anything as they were being bombarded by the Saints defense, forcing the Redskins to punt and give the ball to the Saints. And with all the momentum the Saints had, there was no way they were ever going to lose this game.
Will Lutz wins it. What a game. Saints have won 8 straight.
The Saints would achieve their 8th win in a row. Unfortunately, the very next week they would fall short to the Rams. The Saints would end the season 11-5, improving significantly on their previous 7-9 season. Despite the Panthers getting swept by the Saints in the regular season, they would get their chance at some revenge in the postseason. But ultimately, the Saints defense would overwhelm the Panthers.
Blitz. A sack. Saints win.
Next up was the Vikings. The infamous Saints vs. Vikings game.
Steps into it. Pass is caught. Diggs. Sideline. Touchdown. Unbelievable. Vikings win it.
A heartbreaking way to end the season. But this was by no means a bad season. Actually, this was an incredible season considering the context. The Saints had just had an incredible draft, as Marshawn Lattimore and Alvin Kamara had won Offensive and Defensive Rookie of the Year. 38-year-old Drew Brees, who was showing signs of his aging, was still very much an elite quarterback. The O-line was elite. Michael Thomas was quickly becoming one of the best receivers in the NFL. Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara had become one of the most dynamic running back duos in the entire NFL. And the defense had greatly improved. From being a complete liability just a season prior, to now being one of the best parts of the team. On paper and on the field, this team was much better. Actually, not just better, this team was borderline elite. So it's no surprise, going into 2018, expectations were extremely high. In 2018, the New Orleans Saints went from a good football team to a Super Bowl contending one. 2009 was the season that brought New Orleans from being labeled a poverty franchise to a good one. But a second Super Bowl wouldn't just establish them as a good franchise, but as a winning franchise. And it would secure Drew Brees' spot as one of the best quarterbacks of all time. In 2018, the New Orleans Saints did everything in their power to bring that dream to fruition. They were chasing that second Lombardi trophy. 2018 would start with a loss for the Saints, falling short to the Buccaneers in a 40-48 shootout. But after that, they would start winning again and again, scoring an absurd amount of points every single game. 43, 45, 51, 48. The New Orleans Saints were steamrolling every single team they faced, with everyone putting up insane numbers. Notably, Drew Brees was the clear-cut favorite for his first ever MVP trophy, as he was on pace towards having the most efficient season by a quarterback of all time. After overcoming the Falcons in Week 12 for their 10th win in a row, Drew Brees through 11 games had thrown for 28 touchdowns and just 2 interceptions. But the Saints would slow down near the very end of the season, losing 2 of the last 5 games. But they would still finish with a record of 13-3, clinching the first seed in the NFC, meaning the defending Super Bowl champions, the Eagles, would have to come to the Superdome for the divisional round. And this game started off rough for the home team. The Eagles led 14-0 after just the first quarter. They were completely dominating the Saints. It was looking like it was going to be a blowout. But then came the turning point. After this turnover, the Saints would score 20 unanswered points. The Eagles couldn't do anything, but they mustered up one final drive in the last 3 minutes. And if I'm being honest, I thought the Eagles were going to score and end the Saints' playoff run right then and there. They were moving that ball down the field. Until...
2-1, little surprise, Foles back throws, intercepted, went right through Jeffrey's hands, it's Lattimore!
Next up was the Los Angeles Rams. I don't even really want to talk about the rest of this game. Obviously, it was all for nothing. Let's just talk about the moment.
Quick snap, Breeze.
If the pass interference is called, the Saints get 4 more downs, run the ball 3 times, run out the clock, kick the field goal, Saints win. Then they go to the Super Bowl, where Drew Brees faces off against Tom Brady. Instead, we get probably the most blatant no call in NFL history.
Pass is incomplete, no flag for Tommy Lee Lewis.
But that should have been a penalty. And John Payton is justifiably upset.
After this game, the Saints weren't really the same. Drew Brees was quickly fading as his arm was starting to give out. The 2019 season would have the Saints ending with a record of 13-3 again, but would get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. In 2020, the 12-4 Saints would make it to the divisional round and fall to the Buccaneers. In that game, Drew Brees would bid farewell to the Superdome one final time, as his time in the NFL was over. And just like that, the Super Bowl window was officially closed for the New Orleans Saints. Now, without Drew Brees or Sean Payton, we're really just a shadow of our former selves right now. I don't know when or if we'll ever be that good again. Maybe in another universe, the refs throw the flag and Drew Brees gets his second Super Bowl and the Saints get their happy ending. But evidently, not in this one.